I'd like to welcome you again to our classroom here at Jeff Newman College. And this is the second hour in a series of fundamentals and techniques tapes that we're making. What we'd like to do here is not deal too much with the fundamentals that we covered in the first hour. I would assume that you've covered those things and you're developing some degree of technique there. What I'd like to give you in this hour is something to practice while you develop those things. In the last hour, we dwelt mostly on just basic A chord positions and maybe some E chord positions. What I'd like to get into here is some fundamental phrasings that go through little scales, through those chords, and some actual scale positions. And I'd like to take the fear, if I can, away from the word scales. What they mean is just little melody things that sound very well against a certain chord. So we're going to deal in the key of A momentarily and take some basic chord positions and melody string combinations, and then we'll change keys here momentarily. We'll go to the key of C, and we'll get into some little backup ideas, working with a band and working in with a singer, and teaching you how to act where you can play some melody things, where you can play some nice chord things, and you'll not be too chordy, you'll not be too chattery behind the singer. So this is a very practical hour. This will give you some ideas about what to expect should you get a chance to work with a band. And that's what I'd like to shoot you into, if I can, the actual practice sessions of working with a band, so you're not afraid to try it. All right, let's get right down to business, and we'll get into the melodies right off. When we're playing along with a band and we're playing against chords and so forth, rarely do we really play three-note chords, even though many books say play three-note chords, like if you played an A on the 5th fret and you play strings 3, 4, and 5. That does sound nice, and that is an A chord there, but when you're playing with a band and when you're playing along behind the singer and so forth, that's almost overkill in terms of harmonics and harmony and overtones and all that and so forth. What we want to do is narrow it down to 2 strings. They sing better, and it's a lot easier to play, too. So, if you'll go to your page that says the standard picking combinations, we'll pick out and practice a few of the standard melody positions as well as chord positions. They're about the same thing. We'll just do them a little quicker sometimes. So we'll play basically just A chord, and we'll play along with the first rhythm track, which is just the A chord. We'll not be playing too much as far as the E chord goes or a D chord. We'll play straight basic A. Looking at the first example, we're going to play the 6 and 10. That's a nice scale position, really. And then 5 and 8. And then 4 and 6. And then 3 and 5. And we might hold each one of those about 4 beats just to get the feel of it and the sound of it. And then the second line, half of the line is the same thing in reverse, with a little star there on the third one, which says, look out, there's a little change here. That's all that is. Working from the line in the middle down, the 3rd and 5th string, to the 4th and 6th, to the 5th and 6th, which means we don't have to play 5 and 8 this time. We'll play 5 and 6, and 6 and 10. And if I were working in behind a singer, I would be playing these type of chords in behind the singer, not too busy, just letting them lay there. For instance, very much like this along with the track.
1, 2,
about
3,
4 beats on each
4.
one. There's the first one, the second one, and rolling that bar, the third one, and the fourth one. Now the second half of the line, and 4 and 6, and 5 and 6, and 6 and 10. Now going all through each one, rather quickly here. It's almost a melody. Now that's a good practice right there that you can go through, and you can have some fun with it. It's not necessarily any more than just A chord for right now. Now looking at the second line, we can go up to 12, which is A as well, and we can start with the pedals down on 12, and you use 6 and 10 again. However, I'm cheating. I'm not doing exactly as it says. I'm squeezing the A pedal in. Then the second example, squeeze that A pedal again. And then the third example, which is 4 and 5. Notice we're not playing 4 and 6 there. We're playing 4 and 5. This is where the combinations change just a little bit. And 3 and 5. So the first half of the line is first one, and the second one, and the third one, and the fourth one. Now, looking at the second half, we can come back in the reverse and make some slight changes there. That's what the little stars are for. 3 and 5 stays the same. Squeezing that A pedal each time. The fourth and fifth, squeezing the A pedal. And this time we'll change the fifth and the eighth string to 5 and 6. And we're squeezing that A pedal again. And then we're going to drop back to 10, the 10th fret, with the D lever in, and that's the one that lowers the 8th string. So you've got a knee lever that lowers the 4th string and the 8th, and that's the one we're using. Wherever it is on your guitar, it doesn't matter. Find that, and that's the one you're trying to use there. They're in different places on many different guitars. So the second half of that line is kind of unique. Here it is again. And the second one, and the third one. Now we drop back to 10 and hit that D lever. Now that's an A chord too, by the way. That's the same sound as 6 and 10 was on 12 with both pedals. So the same sound is there. And back to 10. So it's just another way of playing it. Again, what we're doing is we're playing some chords here, and this is going to be nice melody work too. Notice that each time we play these, I'll remind you again, the vibrato has to be on each one of them. Again, with just the little A track. This is the second line.
1,
Up
2,
on 12 with both
3,
pedals.
4.
First one. And the 5 and 8. And the third one. And the fourth one. And working down the second half. And the fourth and fifth. Now 5 and 6. Back to 10. Now here's the whole line rather quickly. Squeezing that A pedal and backwards and down and squeeze and drop. Once again. And 3 and 4, backwards, squeeze, and 10. So what we have here is we have A's that are down on the 5th fret. We have A's that are up on 12 with both pedals down. We can go through all of those rather quickly, and it makes a very nice exercise. We're not necessarily going to hold it 4 beats now. We're going to hold it 2 because it'll become melody here, and it's very good technique for your right hand. You have to find those strings, and they're important things to learn to find very quickly. Remember, throw vibrato on every one. No matter what we're doing, the vibrato has to be there. So from the very start, here's both lines.
1,
starting on
2,
5, and then we'll
3,
go up to 12.
4.
Now down. Little change here. And down to 12. And up. Squeeze. Roll. And down. Change. And back to 10. From the beginning again. And on up. And down. And change. Now to 12. Squeeze that A pedal. And up. Roll that bar and down. Change. And that's basically all the exercise is. It makes you find the right strings. It makes you think about what fret you're on. It makes you squeeze the pedals. And most of all, it makes you think about rolling that vibrato in there each time. All right, work on that just a little bit. In this little section here, we're going to be dealing basically with only melody notes. These are scales, as a matter of fact. We'll just call them melody positions for right now. These are the sounds, or what I just call them noises. They don't have to have notes or names to them. It doesn't really matter as long as you know these are patterns of notes, and that's what you want to look of them at is as a pattern, because you want to be able to transpose these up and down the neck to different keys. We're doing this in the key of A, and that's all. We're just going to start on the 5th fret, and by learning it out of A and learning it very well, you can move it up and down the fretboard and play in any key you want. For instance, if you look at the sheet that says just the melody scales in the key of A, this is number 1, for instance. Here's the first note on the 3rd and 4th string, and out to the 1st and 2nd string, then down to 4 and 5 with the A pedal in, up to 7 with the A and B pedal down, but we're on the 5th and 6th strings here, down to the 5th fret with both pedals and the 5th and 6th strings again. And the pedals up, same strings. Now notice we got the B pedal down and we're playing strings 6 and 7, which is an odd combination. We don't do that much, but it is a melody note. And then the pedals up and we're playing strings 6 and 8. Now this is a melody scale. Listen to it again. Here's what it sounds like. Now that sounds like do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do, maybe in reverse or whatever. The main thing that it is all the right sounds that would work against an A chord. If the band were playing A, those notes would sound like a little melody. The only thing is when you play them by themselves and you don't hear the band back there, it sounds very boring. However, it's something you have to practice until you learn it well enough to play along with the band. So take a little bit of time and take the time to memorize it without looking at the sheet. That's the main thing. If you're reading it off the sheet music or looking here at what I'm doing, sometimes it's not near as good and you're not learning it as well as if you learn to play it just looking at your guitar, strictly out of memory. The main thing to work at is that it works just like we played it, but it works in reverse as well. Listen to it. Here's the same thing, but backwards, starting with the 6th and 8th string, or the last note on the line. So you have to learn it both ways, because melodies go up and they go down. As a matter of fact, you're going to have to learn to play this from the middle down and from the middle up and be able to go down and back up. You might practice before you ever use the track or anything, going along like this, playing it just as you see it, and then doing it the reverse. So this will be all the way down and back up. Keeping one thing in mind again, we're learning technique here, not necessarily just notes. So when you play this, concentrate on the other part that is most important, and that's the vibrato. So the bar wants to be rolling on every note. If you play it dead, here's what you're going to get. Sounds very amateurish, and that's not what we're trying to do here. We're trying to develop some degree of skill here. And you can play something as simple as this, and it'll work very well in working with a band or anything you want. So the technique is as important as the right notes. If you get one and not the other, you're in big trouble. Also notice we're changing strings there, right from the first note to the second. The 3rd and 4th string goes. Then I've got to reach out and hit the 1st and 2nd string. Now I need to be muting with the right hand down here, getting rid of that first note when I go out to the second one. So I'm touching those strings and I'm reaching out there. Notice also I'm shooting the bar out. And when I come back to that 3rd note, I've got the bar all the way out there on the 1st and 2nd string. I bring it back right quick, so I'm going. So I'm using the bar to help me get rid of notes too, and I'm actually touching notes. That 2nd finger, the long finger that's in front of the bar, notice I've got the bar well back inside as well. So it helps me when I want to get rid of notes that I've played out in front like that. There's a lot of technique going on here that's kind of automatic reaction to me, but you'll have to work on it. So here's the whole thing down and then back up. Rolling that bar, back up. Now every one of those notes was muted with the right hand. My hand's jumping up and down there. Every one of those notes had a little bit of vibrato on it. I never let one of them be dead. I try not to get too busy that I forget to do those technique things. Take your time. Go slower than I've gone if you need to, but get this little thing in mind, what it sounds like. Along with the first rhythm track, number 1, which is just A chord, we can take our time and really use long notes here. Try it along with the rhythm track, and here's what it'll sound like.
3.
This is just the first line. Muting and rolling. Again. Keep the roll going. Got to keep your head straight and keep all those techniques together. Back up. So you can do both of these things very well. You can go down and you can go back up. The technique is most difficult if you've never done it before. So take a little time. Make sure you're getting it right before we go any farther. Notice how these notes sound along with a rhythm track, by the way. You'll notice that this is a scale, and in the truest explanation of what a scale is, it says all these notes are supposed to sound good against the chord of A. And that's not true. That's a misnomer. They don't sound good. Only really the first one sounds good. The second one is an oddball note against the chord of A. It works if you use it in passing down to that third one, and that one sounds a lot better. So you're going to notice there are some controversies in sound, and that's all right. They're supposed to be there. Matter of fact, that's what makes music sound good. It's a nice, interesting controversy or war going on between different sounds, and there's tension being built there. Some notes sound great, and they're right on, and then you'll play like that second note, which is a little odd, but it releases the tension when it comes to the third one. And then the fourth note is really very strange sounding, but it comes back and sounds not quite so bad back on 5 with the A and B pedal. And then finally all the tension is released when you turn loose of the pedals. And then that sixth note, the 5 with the B pedal, is kind of strange again, and it's true. If you've noticed it, that's the way it ought to sound too. And then the last one releases all that tension. So scales are a series of little tension notes running together, and some notes sound good, some don't. Practice along with that first rhythm track and practice this scale for a little bit and get used to that sound, get used to the technique. Now, once you've got that, you can go to the second one and you get a totally different little scale. Again, this is a pattern that we're trying to learn that we can transpose to other keys. So don't just pay too much attention to the frets. Notice the distances that we're traveling here. The second melody scale, or the bottom line there, sounds like this. It's up on 12. We're starting with an A on 12 with both pedals down. I'm going to squeeze that A pedal, by the way. Then the second note is just 12 without, and then back to 10 with no pedals. And then to 12 with both pedals down, and we're picking those 4th and 5th strings and squeezing that A pedal again. Back to 10 with the A pedal and squeezing, and to 12 picking strings 5 and 8. Squeeze that pedal again, and back to 10 with the A pedal. And you can squeeze, and you can let the pedal off for that metal, and then the D lever. And you can be sloppy about hitting that D lever. It sounds kind of nice hitting it. No pedals, and then the D, and that's a knee lever. So here's that second scale. That one has a lot of soul in it because we've got pedals going in there that we can squeeze quite a lot. So here's the first one. And here's the second one. Same sound, it's just in a different way. Now that second one works backwards. If the first one did, then this one does too, because all these are melody sounds, they're scales. So practice going backwards through that second line. So you can go up and down through that one too, doing along with a rhythm track. Not to waste too much time here, so here's what it'll sound like. This is the second line.
1, 2, 3.
Roll that bar on each one. Don't forget to mute here. And squeeze. Roll that bar. Come down. Be a little sloppy here. Again. Squeeze. And down. Change strings. Mute. Roll. Squeeze. Sloppy here. Backwards. Back up. Squeeze that. Squeeze. Mute, and squeeze, again from the bottom. Mute it, pick it, bring it on up, pick and squeeze, back down, quicker. Again. Back up through it that fast. This is harder. One again. Both ways. Backwards. Now that gives you a good idea of how you might be using a melody up around the 12th fret. Again, this is all just the chord of A. Notice you're using some odd frets there. You're going from 12 back to 10, but many of the melody notes that you'll be playing in the chord of A and in the key of A are going to be back there on the 10th fret using that D lever, so that's a new position. Keep in mind, we do want to be able to transpose this. So while you're practicing this thing in A, once in a while jump maybe up to C, maybe off of 15 or back to the 3rd fret with both pedals down, and see if you can play this same scale, transposing it down there. And the same with the first line that was off of A on the 5th fret. Maybe move up to 8 and play it as a C up there or a D on 10, and see if you can remember how the whole thing goes, because once you learn these scales, you've got them in your head. You don't have to learn 200 different scales or 12 different ones for the different keys there are. You learn this one time and you learn this one little pattern, for instance the one off the 5th fret and the one off the 12th fret, and you're getting right along with learning scales for any key you want. All right, work on these for just a moment. This is the 3rd line, or the 3rd melody scale, the next page there. This one's all just on the 3rd and 5th string, and this one's probably a lot easier than the others. It doesn't work you as hard because it's only on those 2 strings, and this is a most common scale that you hear on a lot of the old Ray Price things, anything that was done from 1960 on. This is the kind of scale you heard for introductions, for fills, the Buddy Emmons, the Jimmy Day sounds of years ago, and we still use them a lot because they sound good, they sing well, and they're easy to play too. This is just an A scale. It doesn't necessarily start with an A chord, however, so it's not an A note. It is an A chord. It's on the 3rd and 5th strings. Surely it's an A if it's there. So the first note, this is number 3 now, is the 5. Both pedals down, squeezing that A pedal, by the way, up to 7 with pedals, up to 10 with no pedals, to 12 with no pedals, and the pedals down, and then up to 15 with no pedals, which is a very odd note in an A scale, and in the key of A, and then you end up on 17, which is a high A. So here's the whole thing. This is number 3. Notice I'm squeezing the A pedal every time there's one in there, and I've already got the B pedal down, and there's vibrato on virtually every note there. By the way, it has to go backwards, so work at it backwards. 17 down to 15, 12 pedals, 12 without, 10, 7 pedals, 5 and no pedals. That one's harder because you're moving backwards down the frets. You can't really see where you're going near as well as when you're going from the left to the right. So you need to work harder at going down rather than up. Again, these sound nice. They're a lot more fun to practice, and you can actually slide these together. And you can slide them down. And they really sound a lot more like melody than the others did. Here it is along with a rhythm track again.
1, 2,
this is number 3. Nice and
4.
slow. On up, roll that bar, and backwards. This is very slow, by the way. It sounds kind of strange. Squeezing that bar and rolling. So you can work on that momentarily, and what you'll get is some nice melody notes there. That's kind of slow. This should be moved up to the little quicker tempo. We use this a lot for fills, by the way, so this is one you really want to learn well. Notice this covers an expanse of 12 frets, so it's going to be a lot more difficult to remember in another key, and you have to remember how far did I move, say from 5 to 5 pedals. I moved 2 frets up to 7 with the pedals, and then I went 3 frets up to 10 and turned loose of the pedals, then 2 more frets without pedals, and then pushing the pedals down, and then up 3 frets without pedals to 15. And that's what you're looking for, is that kind of a little pattern in there, because that's what you're going to try to remember in another key as you transpose. Without too much ado, let's go on to the number 4 so you can get to practicing all these at one time, because they all become one big scale and one big melody for you. Here's number 4. Again, it starts down low in an A this time. It's sort of part of the other scale, the very first one we learned. It's going to change, however, in the middle. First one, 6 and 8 strings. And there's that little 6 and 7 string trick with the B pedal in again. And then 5 and 6. And so far it's just like the other scale was. So is this. Pedals down to 7 with the pedals down. And here's where it changes. We're going to go right on up the fretboard to 10, no pedals, to 12 with no pedals, and the pedals down, strings 5 and 6. Again, squeeze that pedal. Here it is, number 4. Roll and mute. Now this one works backwards as well, so here it is. A little bit more muting technique in this part, isn't it? Up and down. And backwards. Every note has that vibrato, doesn't it? And I'm squeezing every chance I get where there's an A and B pedal. All right, we'll take both of these little scales right quick, and we'll go up and down through number 3, up and down through number 4,
1,
putting it all together.
2, 3, 4.
Taking our time here, squeezing the pedals. Don't get too busy to roll. And backwards. And you can slide. Squeeze. And back to 10, 7, 5. Now number 4. And squeeze the pedals. And squeeze. Move up. Keep the roll. And backwards through this. And down. Be sloppy with those pedals. So there you have 4 different ones that you can use. These things are all used. They all have their place, let's put it that way. And you'll use them at different times for different melodies with a different tempo on each one. Each one, however, is still just A scale. We haven't changed what we're playing. We're changing the way it's voiced and the way we play it. Again, they're all patterns. Keep in mind, you want to get the pattern in mind, not necessarily the fret numbers. I think learning the 5th fret and the 7th fret and so forth is not an important part. What we're after is how far the bar moves and exactly what pedals are used when you use them. Okay, you need to stop right here and get these things well in mind and work along with the rhythm track, and then we can get down to business. And another key, we're going to the key of C now. Okay, in this section we're going to change key. We're going to go to the key of C, and we're going to do something that's a little more practical than just playing scales and so forth. This is going to be something you can actually use in a song, and we'll get it in a song before we're done here. This rhythm track says we're going to play in C, and we might be using a C on 3 with the pedals, for instance. And then it's going to go to a G chord, which might be a G on the 3rd fret, with no pedals. Fortunately, we're going to do a little bit of both. It makes it a little bit more fun, and it's a lot more practical as far as learning to play the fills behind a singer. What this is leading you to is learning how to react with a singer, how to play some chord things behind the singer, and then when the fills come. We're going to be using basic chord positions of C on 3 with pedals and C on 8, and maybe C up on 15 with both pedals down. And we'll be using a G on the 3rd fret with no pedals, and maybe a G on 10 with the pedals down, and maybe a G on 15 with no pedals. So even if you don't know those positions well, you will when we get down here. What we're going to be working with is our little titled Etude number 1, which Etude means just study. This is a study of playing chords for 4 beats. It'll be a C for 4 beats. That's the first group. And I'm just going to squeeze that A pedal in there and roll that bar. 1, 2, 3, 4. Then the second one is the same thing. This is just chord work. And then the band is going to go to a G chord, and we're going to take off into a little melody, and it's going to be rather quick, I'm afraid. And then the second line will pick up right there, and we're going to be playing a G chord for 4 beats, because that's what the band is doing, and then another G chord. So we're pulling together everything we've studied up to now, and then when the band goes back down to C chord, we're going to play a little C fill, we call it, which is nothing but C scale again. Now this is a rather strange new position. 11A right there is really part of a C chord, and then it's going to drop back to 8 with pedal, and then, so the little Etude number 1 sounds like this. 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, and run. And pick the chord, 2, 3, 4, 2, 3, 4, and run. Now right here is where you want to take the time to stop and learn this thing. Now, once you've heard how I just did it there, doing it in time with a rhythm without knowing it or trying to read it off the sheet music, as I'm afraid is going to be quite a lot for you to handle if you're not fairly proficient in what you're doing. So take the time here to work and count if you want to. You'll notice that the count is written along the bottom of the sheet music there. Playing 4 beats and squeezing that A pedal for the C. 2, 3, 4, and squeezing that other one. That's the second one. And then practice that scale so you don't have to look at the sheet music. There's no time. You have to know this scale, and it needs to be in your head. It's going by too fast, that's why. Notice that on each one of those notes, I've put vibrato there. Don't get too busy. Here's what you'll get again if you don't get that vibrato. It's very stiff and it's very boring sounding. It needs that life that that left hand will give it again. And then the second line again, practice that 4-beat G right there. Roll that bar, make it interesting. And then the second one, 4 beats, 2, 3, 4, and then that little C run coming back down. And this is more difficult because what you're doing is playing a scale backwards. And I remember what I told you, that's more difficult because you can't see right where you're going each time. And in a way, you're playing it by ear. And then you're back to the start again. So these two lines run into each other. You play the first one, then you play the second one. And then you're right back to the first one again, and it goes over and over. And you'll notice that the rhythm track just stays 2 measures or 8 beats of C. Then it stays 2 measures of G, and then another 2 measures of G. Then it comes back to C. And very shortly, all this is going to become a song, and there's going to be a singer in here. So here's Etude number 1, along with a rhythm track, which is the Etude rhythm track.
1, 2, 3,
4 beats of C. And again. Now the run. Roll that bar. And the chord of G. This is the second line. 4 beats. Here comes that C run. Back to the first line. Chord. 4 beats. And again. Here's that G run. Roll that bar. And the second line, 4 beats of G. And again. And the run. Back to the first line. And here's the C. And G chord. And the C scale. Now what you're going to get out of this is you're learning the scale first, you're learning to play in time, and I hope you're learning to play in pitch or in tune. Again, I cautioned you in the first hour that what you'll have to do is play by ear and not so much by eye. When you're playing these scales, there's not much time to look at the frets, you have to have the feel of it. And when you play the chords, especially up high, up here on 15, you can't really look at those frets all that much, you have to play by ear there. So keep your ear tuned to the rhythm track as well as to your steel. The timing is much quicker here. You're going to have to develop some degree of proficiency here because this scale is really working you to death. I want to bring your attention to one thing. Notice in the first line that the first fill is a G7th fill. It says G7th, but even though it is, it starts with a G note. That's true. But from then on, it's still just C scale. So overall, all we're playing here are C chords and G chords. That's true. But the fills and the runs we're doing, the melody notes that we're doing, are nothing but C scale. And we start it different and we end it different. And that's what makes it sound different. notice how the rhythm track makes it come alive and it doesn't become do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti, do anymore. Okay, stop right here and take the time to learn this Etude number 1 and get where you can play it along, because the other ones get more difficult, I'm afraid. And now the technique is getting harder as well. So take the time to stop and learn it well before you go on. We're working with Etude number 2 here, so find the Etude number 2 page, and again, it's just a study in scales. Again, this is no new thing different than what we learned in the A scales. All we've done is transpose them down to another position. On Etude number 2, the very first note is one of those oddball positions that I noticed in the key of A that was on 10 with the D lever. It starts with that actual note. That's a C chord there, 1 with the D lever, and again, the D lever lowers 4 and 8, so we're lowering the 8 string with the knee lever. And where it is doesn't matter. You just find it on your guitar where it is. So we start there with a chord, like 4 beats. Then it comes up to 3 with both pedals down, even though it says just the A pedal. That's a C chord too. Now we start the little fill, which would be in between a singer's phrases, I suppose. And this is nothing but a C scale again. Looks very much like that other A scale we did, though, starting with that 6 and 8. This is a little bit of a change. We're actually learning some 7th chord scales there. Again, this is the first line, the 1D to 3A and B. This is the little G7th fill that looks most of the time just like C scale. Here's where it changes. Now, here's that second line. This is a G7th chord, by the way. The 8 with the B and the D lever, and again down lower, they're both G7. So you've got one on the floor and one knee lever working there. And you can squeeze that B pedal in, by the way. Now we start a little C scale, and this is kind of a new wrinkle. I'm giving you another position of how to start a scale. And then the third line, third note of that run. And this is where you jump back and start again at the very top. So the very last note does sound like this. Sounds unfinished. Well, of course it does, because I start with the first note of the next line, and then I'm ready to go again. So here's Etude number 2. 4 beats of His, 4 beats of C, 3. Now the little run. 4 beats of G7th, and another 4 beats. Now the little C scale. And it ends with that first note that's on the first line. All right, along with the rhythm track, here's what it'll sound like. Number 2. And you start the G7th. Second line, G7th. Here's that C scale. Start again. First line. 4 beats each time. Now run with it. Keep that bar rolling. G7th, second line here. Squeeze that D pedal if you want to. Start again. 4 beats. 3, 4. 2, 3, 4. Keep rolling and squeezing. Second line. And squeeze. And roll. C scale. And you can end it with just 1 D if you want to. So this is a real good practice and a real good exercise in using your knee lever. It's a good exercise in movement, because we're having to move all over the fretboard from really the first fret all the way up to 8 and back down. And we're using C scale, we're using C chord, we're using G7th. Let me explain that momentarily. G could be on the 10th fret with both pedals down. We've played that before. If we drop back 2 frets, with the B and the D lever, that'll give you G7th every time. So I can play strings 3, 4, and 5 on 10, drop back 2 frets, and hit G7th with the B and the D lever on any group I want. 4, 5, and 6, 5, 6, and 8, 6, 8, and 10 even. So that's a good theory of where to find a 7th anytime. You can always drop back from a pedal down chord like a G on 10 with pedals and drop back 2 frets, and that's what we were using in this little Etude to give us G7. Okay, you should stop right here and get this one well in mind, and then see if you can maybe combine the two, because that's where we're going ultimately, to put all of these together. All right, take a time, stop, and get them so you can play them without looking at the sheet music. In working with the Etude number 3, you need to find that one, by the way. Etude number 3 is going to give you some new positions of melody scales. We're working through some 7th scales here too. This is probably the most interesting of all 3 of them, and obviously it's going to be the hardest. I like this one the most because it works all through the different ranges of the strings and the different ways of playing the 7th chord. This is the most fun, let's put it that way, and it's going to work you to death. Again, it's the same idea. We're going to play a C, but we're going to play the octave up high, where it's very pretty. C on 15 with the pedals down, squeezing that A pedal, and then coming down and squeezing the A pedal again on 15. And this is a very nice little G7 scale. You want to memorize this one both ways, by the way, because you'll be using this the rest of your playing days. There's the little run on starting on 15, back to 13, out to those first and second strings, to 4 and 5, sliding back to 12, and that's a very strange sounding little melody there, but nice. Wait till you hear it in with a rhythm track. Slow, it's kind of odd. Then back to 10 with pedals, drop down to strings 5 and 6, down to 8 with A and B pedal. Now we'll start the second line right here, which starts with a G7th, and you're sitting right on it. Same G7th we used before, up to 10 with both pedals, 4 beats on each one of those. Now here's the little C scale, and this should look very familiar to you. Here's the little chains, the 11A, that's another C chord right there. And then we'll start again from the very top. So here's the whole Etude number 3. 4 beats of this, 2, 3, 4, squeeze, roll. Now start the run. G7th, 4 beats, 3, 4, G, 2, 3, 4, C scale. And start again. We'll put it in with a rhythm track here. This one is definitely one you want to memorize without having to try to read it, because you're jumping all over.
2, 3, 4.
First line, squeeze. Now the run. Second line, roll that bar. Now the C scale. Start again, 4 beats, and again 4 beats. Now run with it. Four beats, and another 4 beats. And the C scale. Start again. And 4 beats. And run with it. A lot of muting here. 4 beats of G7th. G. Now the C scale. From the top, and run with the G7th, G7th, and the C scale. And you can end with the pedals down. So this one is a lot more fun. It has a lot nicer little singing sound to it, and it's a very useful fill scale idea that you can use in many, many songs, because most songs will have C scales in them if they're in the key of C, and most songs will have a G7th or a G in it, and you can use any of these ideas this way and backwards as well. So take this time to stop right here and pick this one up, get it where you can really play it without looking at the paper. The end result of all this is obviously to have some idea of where the chords are and to have some variety in your playing so you don't play the same old lick all the time. Obviously, what these etudes are trying to do is teach you to move, and they're getting you around through the scales and getting used to the sound that odd positions might give you rather than just sitting on one chord. That's what will make you a vanilla player, we call it, if you don't have any little controversial notes or scale notes that build some tension in there. The ideal situation would be that you could take all three of these etudes here and play 1 and then 2 and then 3, and it gives you that variety of sound, and it makes you think. You have to think ahead about what you're doing. So what I'd like to do is demonstrate here to you what you might want to be practicing, and it'll give you a lot of technique if you can get it, because you're going to have to think all these scales and all these chord positions, and you'll be a pretty good player if you can play all these through and add the vibrato to it and be able to squeeze the pedals and not blow a note here and there. I will caution you that if you do make a mistake and if you get lost, don't stop there, because if you stop in the middle of the rhythm track, you're practicing stopping. So don't practice that. Practice the mistake if you have to, but get on by it and go on to the next note. Catch up to where you're supposed to be. I'm going to play Etude number 1 all the way through, and then I'm going to finish the Etude number 1 about where it would end with a C chord. Then I'll jump down to the 1D, which is where the second etude starts, and I'll play just a short one there, and I'll start into the etude number 2, and then I'll finish that one, and then I'll have to jump way to the top. So you're going to see some little changes in timing, and that's all. You'll notice I'll play number 1, number 2, number 3, and in effect it'll make quite a nice little instrumental that you can practice. And you're not just practicing melodies now, you're going to be practicing some nice theory ideas in terms of C major chord, G7th chord, C major scale, and G7th scale, even though G7th, you should look at it as nothing more than a lot of C scales starting in odd positions. So here we have it. We're going to be playing along all three of them. This is Etude number 1. And the run. Second line. Always rolling. And the run. Into Etude number 2, right here. And here's the G7th run. And the second line. Keep rolling and squeezing. And the little C scale. And Etude number 3, quickly. And here's the little G7th. Second line, G7th. And the little C scale. Back to number 1. Line, and the little C run. Number 2, and the run. Never forgetting vibrato. I'm cheating a little bit, I like it. And I've run out of track, but that's all right. You can just keep playing and keep going back. The idea is to put them all together. Have fun with this thing. Develop the technique. This is real practice. This is practical practice that you can use in with a singer, which we'll do here just shortly. Take your time now and see if you can put them all together. We can put all these things together in one song if you'd like to try it. This is a good old Texas song called Does Fort Worth Ever Cross Your Mind? and we can use these little etudes as the chording and the fills actually behind the singer here. Before we get into it, though, there is a nice little intro we can do, and I've given you the intro there. This is part one of it. This is just the a nice long intro. This is not normal. It's about twice as long as it ought to be. But here's the pickup notes. And then the band will come in right there, and the count will be like 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And the band picks it up on the first beat, obviously. So that's the first part. That's the first two lines. 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. And then it'll pick up part 2 right quick. You go from 10. And the second line. And a nice little space and little pickup notes. And that's where we'll pick up Etude number 1. So here's the intro. It'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 1. Quickly move. And the pickup notes. Now, this will be the start of an etude right there, that last note. So that note right there will be either 3 with pedals out of Etude number 1, or 1D out of Etude number 2, or maybe up to 15. We'll have to pick it up right there. I'm going to play along with the tune here. Ronnie Robinson is the one that's singing this tune here, by the way, a nice young singer out of North Carolina. And you'll probably be hearing a lot from him, but I'm going to play along behind him and use just the etudes as the fills behind what he's doing. We'll just take the verses. We won't get too much into the choruses. I might fake it in here. We'll get into that later.
2, 1, 2, 3, 4.
And go. Part 2. And the little fill. Etude number 1. And the fill. Number 2.
Burn one for me if you get time. Those good memories don't fade so easy. Does Fort Worth ever cross your mind? You left me here to be with him in Dallas, and I know it hurt you
A G7 scale.
at the time. But I wonder now if it made a difference. Does Fort Worth ever cross your mind?
to G here. C scale. So you can take this little etude and take any one of them, number one, number two, number three. You can mix them up. You can do anything you want to. And you can take this song, and it just so happens it does work out in this one. It may not work out exactly this way for every song because every song doesn't go from C to G. That's not the point here. The point is that many songs do, and many songs have C phrases in them. And many songs do have G seventh phrases, or in whatever key they're in, this is transposable. The point is to get moving, get your hands working, and get the feel of playing the fills behind a singer as chords, just two measures, and then playing the fills like this. This will sort of brainwash you and psych you into playing the right way. Notice we're not trying to play real fancy behind the singer, just play some nice fills when the holes come up there. Okay, stop right here and go at it. This is going to be the more fun than you ever thought you'd get into once you get the feel of it. I hope you've enjoyed this hour, and I hope you don't find it too difficult. It is a lot of fun, and it's going to take a lot of work on your part, I'm sure. And if you like this kind of thing, we are going to make more of it, and there's going to be other subjects we can work with the same way. And I hope you find time sometime to come down to school with us. We teach very much the same way. We take our time, and we do it with rhythm tracks just like this and explain very much the same way. It has been brought to my attention that maybe someone might be tempted to maybe misuse this tape or reproduce it in any way. And actually, what I've given it some thought is if there's any way I can persuade you to do different, I know that it really doesn't really matter. And I know you wouldn't do any such thing like that, but that's all right. And I just thought I'd make mention that it's not for resale and it's not for use in any other way. Not really sure I know how to use this thing. I've tried before. Well, as a matter of fact, I've found kind of another way. I guess one of the best ways to use it might be...
1, 2, 3,
well, okay.
4, 1.